So I posted this video yesterday of Reba asking my TikTok followers what their evaluation of these reactions, what's causing these reactions in Reba. And you can see here she's pretty watchy, looking around all of the time. She keeps kind of bolting and spooking, kind of like she's getting goosed and running forward, pulling at the lead. Lots of unpredictable behavior here with her. And I really wanted to see if my followers saw the same thing that I do. And I left a few clips in here to kind of give you guys an idea of what I am thinking with this. And but I got a lot of assumptions. I got a lot of people saying, she's baby brain. They assuming that she's a horse being halter broke. A lot of people saying that maybe she was abused in her past and she doesn't trust me. People saying that she's testing her boundaries, that, she's just not paying attention to me, just being naughty, and a lot of training related assumptions when it came to Reba. Now, for those of you who don't know Reba, I adopted her as a 7-year-old untouched Mustang, and she has been my go-to ranch horse for the last 6 or 7 years working on the ranch. I've used her for cuttings, I've used her sorting on the ranch, branding, doctoring, lessons, clinics, parades. This horse has been one of my go-to horses for the past 6 or 7 years. And she's been about as solid can be for any job on the ranch. And she's been one of my top demo horses for educational videos, for making a bridle horse and things like that. And she has just been an all around solid horse you can go and do anything on. Now, Reba is a hotter mare and she's a little bit opinionated and she's sassy and sensitive, but she's never really had issues coming along in training. She's always been respectful, she's always been diligent, and has a lot of try, and she really wants to please. And so I've never had issues with her before, with her behaving the way that she was in the first clips that I showed you guys. As you can see here, she's, a pretty solid horse that I've used for just about everything. So there's two reasons why I posted that first video asking TikTok for their evaluation of Reba and what their assumptions are. First, I wanted to show people that it is really, really hard to make an accurate evaluation of a horse's behavior, even off a minute-long video with multiple clips showing different behaviors of that horse if you don't know the history of that horse. And the second reason, which is what this video is actually going to be about, is that when it comes to behavioral issues in horses, especially situations like this, where you have a horse that is proven in their industry, been a solid horse, suddenly develops violent reactions or starts developing behavioral issues like this, is that it is not always, and actually is more commonly, not related to training issues in the horse, but is actually linked to pain in the horse. So a couple of weeks ago, my husband was riding Reba. He went out to gather cows, and he said towards the end of the gather, there's 3 separate times within probably a 20-minute time frame where Reba had done this under saddle, where she just tucked her butt and bolted forward, 10, 20 feet. And then the whole time she was looking behind her like this, as if something was chasing her. So he got off, checked her out. Everything seemed fine, got back on, continued riding, and she'd do it again. Like I said, she did this 3 times in probably 20 minutes. So the next day when I went out to water the horses, I noticed that Reba's right hind leg was a little bit swollen, and she wasn't favoring it or anything like that. It's just a little bit swollen. I checked it out, cold hosed it, put some liniment on it. Wasn't anything that I was really super concerned about. I figured that maybe with her just scooting forward and doing what she did with Jeff, maybe she took a misstep and strained her leg a little bit. So I went inside and talked about it with my husband and stuff like that, and asked him what she was doing, and he told me again. I said, well, maybe she got stung by a bee, and then she was just being kind of goosey with her hind end after that, after being stung, because she is a sensitive horse. And so if she gets hurt or something like that, gets stung by a bee, she tends to be a little bit watching, kind of like what's going on around me kind of deal. So we just kind of chalked it up that she got stung by a bee on her leg, and that's what was causing the swelling. That's what caused the scooting. and bolting, and just decided we're just going to give her a few weeks off and no big deal. So this weekend, I had a new lesson client come in, and I figured that I would ride Reba for my demo horse. Doing some light riding for an hour-long lesson probably wouldn't hurt her, kind of thing. All of the swelling was gone. I hadn't noticed any lameness in her or anything like that. And so I went out and caught Reba to use her as my demo horse. And as I was leading her to the barn, she did this. She tucked her butt, bolted forward. And I turned around and noticed a piece of baling twine on the ground. So I thought, well, maybe the baling twine got wrapped around her legs and freaked her out. Picked up the baling twine, started going back to the barn, and she did this 3 or 4 more times. So I decided to lunge her and see maybe it is her leg. Maybe her leg still does hurt a little bit. So I decided to lunge her and see if there was any lameness in that leg. She didn't show any signs of lameness in that leg, but she kept tucking her butt and running. And she got to the point where she was just running in a panic in a circle around me, dragging me, looking behind her, just tucking her butt and bolting. And I had to cut her off and steer her towards the solid fence in order to get her stopped, because she was pulling away from me so hard. I was scared that she was going to get away and then continue running. So since she wasn't showing any signs of lameness, I kind of just chalked it up to she's feeling a little bit fresh. She's a sensitive mare. We went from having 50-degree days and it never freezing, and then the day before we got our first skiff of snow, and now it's 27-degree days. We had a pretty significant temperature change. And so I just chalked it up to, well, maybe she's just feeling a little bit fresh. She hasn't been ridden in a while. I haven't ridden her in a particularly long time. So maybe she's being sensitive about me riding her, not Jeff riding her, because she can get particular about who rides her and who works with her, kind of deal. She's kind of a one-person horse. And so I just chalked it up to, a combination of things. Let's go to the barn, saddle you up, see how you do from there. So after I saddled her up and I was leading her back out to the pen where I was going to be giving my lesson, she did it 3 or 4 more times in the span of like 25 yards. So then I knew something was up. I was like, something just ain't quite right. So I decided not to ride her. Like I said, she wasn't showing any signs of lameness at this point in time. She wasn't favoring that leg. She was just bolting forward and then looking behind her and just being pretty reactive and being pretty sensitive. So I decided to ride a different horse. When I went inside and talked to my husband about it, and I was telling him, this is what she was doing, it was really weird. She's acting like she's getting stung by a bee. And I've ridden her when she's gotten stung by a bee, and I've been around her when she's gotten stung by bees. And this is exactly how she reacts when she gets stung by a bee. But there's no bees now. So it's one of those things that I'm like, I'm not sure what is going on. She's looking behind her as if something's chasing her, or she got stung by a bee, and just being ultra reactive and scared. And so my husband, he's like, well, she is a super smart horse. So maybe when she did that those 3 times when I was riding her a couple of weeks ago and I immediately got off, maybe she just learned like, hey, I can do this and they leave me alone. And I'm like, no, Reba's not that way. Like Phil, she can do stuff like that. She figures stuff out like that. But Reba, she's not a horse to try to get out of work. She's a solid working horse. She loves her job. I cannot foresee her doing something like this to get out of work because she truly enjoys working. So I spent the rest of the evening thinking about this. And those of you who have followed me for quite a few years know that this is non-typical behavior for Reba. Reba has been my go-to ranch horse for any job. Like I said at the beginning of the video, like she has just been nothing but solid. And yeah, Reba is more hot. She's opinionated and she is sensitive, but she also wants to please. Reba does not like to be corrected. She does not like to be wrong. She wants to be in tune with you and do the right things. She really wants to please and she has a lot of try. So for her to act out like this, I knew that it had to be pain related, because the only times that Reba has ever acted out is when she has been in pain. The only times that she's ever bucked, reared, kicked out, bolted, or anything in the past has always been due that she was in pain. So I knew that this had to be pain related because I know this horse and I know that she is not typically like this. So I really started replaying these reactions in my head and what she was doing when I was getting her out for riding during the lesson. And I was trying to break it all down and replay it in my head and what was causing this bolting and dullness and watchiness, behind her. And so I was breaking it down, replaying it in my head, thinking about what was happening before, what was happening during, and what was happening after, and thinking about all the little pieces coming together and what could be causing this. The first thing that I thought and I noticed, like I said, is it's like she was getting stung by a bee. Like she would be fine. She would be walking just fine, taking some random amount of steps. And then all of a sudden it was like she got stung by a bee and she'd tuck her butt and she'd bolt past me and then she'd spin around and then she'd look behind her after she bolted. And during she bolted, she was watching behind her. But one thing that I particularly noticed that is she was particularly always watching over to the right. So if we watch these videos again, you see her bolt and pull. I get her stop to check in with me. And as I turn to walk away, you can see she's pulling away from me, looking to the right. Again, she bolts again and she's looking to the right as she's pulling away. And as soon as she stops, immediately turns, looks to the right. As we're walking away, she's looking to the right. Here she's pulling away and looking to the right. Again, she's consistently looking to the right. Here's walking, looking at her right side. Here she is kind of getting ready to bolt and look at the right at the same time. You could see her like check in with me, look to her right. And it's pretty consistent. Every single time she pulls and looks away from me, she's always looking to her right side. The other thing that I noticed is when she bolted and pulled, she was skipping in the hind end instead of reaching. She'd skip and hop, take a couple of favored steps on that right hind, and then immediately rest it. So even though right here at the walk, she doesn't really have any obvious lameness, when she would bolt and pull away, she wouldn't reach with that right hind leg, causing her to skip. And then she'd take two, very faint favored steps on that leg and then almost immediately rest it after. And so here you could see her kind of skip, stop, immediately rest that right hind leg. And then going into the next video here, she starts out just kind of bolting, then she gets pinched and then bolts even harder. And so I took these videos and I watched all of them in slow motion, analyzing what she was doing before, during, and after. So leading up to the bolting, I was watching to see if she was short stepping on that right hind, if there was any obvious signs of lameness, if her timing was off with the placement of her feet or anything like that. And you saw there's nothing super obvious leading up to the bolting. There's no obvious lameness there. You would really, really have to look to see if there's any timing difference with her steps. And then during the bolting, I was watching where she was placing her hind feet and how she was placing them, looking for any time that she was favoring that right hind leg, which you saw towards the end of the bolt, she would favor that right hind leg. And then after the bolting, I watched what she did with her body, what she was looking at, where she was looking, noticing that she was immediately resting that right hind leg and looking over to the right. So I have a hunch with this, and my hunch is that Reba has a pinched nerve in her right hind somewhere, whether it is in the hip or wherever else. And that would make sense for her reactions and what she is doing, that she doesn't have any super obvious signs of lameness just walking out, and then all of a sudden she acts like she gets stung by a bee and bolts forward and favors that leg during the bolting, and then immediately rests that leg and is looking over towards it immediately following the bolting. And so I sent these videos over to my body worker asking her opinion, and she agrees with me. She said there could be a couple other things that it could be, but her hunch is that it is a pinched nerve, and she will be coming out Friday to take a look at Reba and see if my hunch is correct and what direction we need to move forward from there. So I will keep you guys updated, but this is my hunch right now moving forward with this. But I wanted to share this with you guys to show that when it comes to behavioral issues in horses, especially when it comes to a horse that has been nothing but solid for years and years, all of a sudden develops a bolting issue, that it's not always correlated to training or someone riding them improperly. That when it comes to issues like this, we really need to dive deep and analyze it on a deeper level to understand where that problem is coming from. Yes, horses do develop bad habits from people who do not ride them properly, and they get frustrated and they start bucking and bolting and doing things seemingly out of nowhere because there hasn't been proper communication between them and the rider, because the rider doesn't know how to correctly communicate with a horse in a way that they understand, and the horse gets frustrated. I mean, Phil is a prime example of that. I've shared Phil's story hundreds of times, talking about how she developed so many bad habits of bucking, rearing, and bolting due to the fact that the people that were riding her in a way that she ended up becoming frustrated and developing those bad habits, because she got tired of being manhandled and being pulled on the mouth all of the time and not having proper communication. But when it comes to our horses developing problems like this, we really need to be diving into the root of the problem and not just assuming that it is a training related issue, but making sure that it is not a pain related issue first and foremost. And it's very, very easy to assume a behavioral problem like this can be rider error. With me, a lot of the work that I do with lessons, with clinics, and things like that, a majority of the problems that I'm solving with horses with violent reactions really is due to rider error, with the horses becoming overly frustrated and acting out because they're finally just done with their rider not communicating with them in a way that they understand and not breaking things down. And so they get frustrated and they start rearing, bucking, and bolting and doing things like that. It's just because the rider is not communicating with them properly and they're getting frustrated. And even this weekend, when I pulled Reba out for that lesson, and she bolted with me, my first automatic assumption was, like I said, it could be the weather, it could be this, but also my assumption in there was that my husband's been riding her and he's not as soft as me. And so maybe she's just acting out because she thinks that I'm not going to be soft with her, kind of deal. And she's getting frustrated. It was very easy for me to automatically assume that, well, this could be because my husband's been riding her and I haven't been riding her. And then chalk it up to a bunch of other things. But the reality of this situation is that she is in pain and she's communicating that with us. And when it comes to horses, horses are prey animals, they mask their pain. So when it does come time for them to actually start acting out violently like this and being ultra reactive and developing a bolting, rearing, bucking, problem, by that time, those horses are in some pretty immense pain. And so that's why when it comes to me, I've lost a lot of potential clients over the years because they've had a horse that developed issues like that. And I tell them, take them to the chiropractor and get body work done, have their teeth done before you bring them to me. And then they call me back and say, hey, my horse doesn't have those issues anymore. I guess he was in pain, kind of deal. But it is our job as horsemen to make sure that we listen to our horses, and when they do start getting these violent reactions, that we break it down like I did, taking videos and analyzing it and finding where the root of that problem is, which in this situation was pain.